Welcome to the lecture series on object-oriented analysis and design. In the last lecture, we have looked at what is called use case driven software development. Just around 60 years, software development has progressed very well with a well documented set of principles, concepts, notations, and the way the software development field has almost emerged as the best alternative across multiple stakeholders, multiple domains is truly amazing, because at some point in time we keep saying repeatedly that is there science, is it an art, is it a discipline, is it engineering, what is it, what is that software development is a big question mark in many cases, but then it has emerged as a very intellectually stimulating method of addressing complexity, which we have been talking about across seemingly different disparate domains, seemingly disparate stakeholders. However, our concern remains that our success rate is a modest 36%. We have tried many alternatives, we have talked about practitioners approach, we tried about process models, systems. Last 60 years we have been talking about software development, software engineering, many forms, with some good working definitions to proceed, but then our success rate at the end of the day, which is banking on the business requirements, is quite dismal. 36% is what we keep telling, and we want to improve on it further. It is not that we do not like stretching, a bit of cost overruns, a bit of time overruns, but that is not the goal. We should do it exactly within the estimated time, within the estimated cost. That is when we say that we have done the story successfully, this software development is success. In the process, we try to seek alternatives. Many times we think that we have been spending a lot of time on test cases, testing, and therefore what we said was, why don't we have test driven software development, TDD, test driven. Anytime it's something like telling that you would learn the subject better if the first half an hour of every day is a test. Please come prepared for the test. First half an hour of every day is a test in that subject. Well, we do not have an a square plus b square is equal to c square formula. There have been several good friends of mine who are researching in this area. They have progressed a bit, they have shown some good successes. Test driven development is a considerable alternative. The one that caught maximum attention was component based development, CBD, where we thought that like your IC chips, there will be plenty of components, all that you need to know is the interface, put the components together, these software components will give you a very big solution, put together a lot of code bases, whatever you want to call, components can come together. You will solve a bigger problem, you will address a larger complexity, which we never thought of. Object oriented is very promising on both test driven as well as component based development. Good ideas, good solutions, but then they have emerged independently, they are researched independently, people are working on it. The UML, the Unified Modeling Language, and other things do give very good props. Just with the 9 diagrams, 11 things, 4 views, you are able to put together all these ideas. The third one, which has been very nice and interesting, is the user centered design, user centered development, talk about usability engineering. That was something which came very close to talking about user. While we have been aggressively commenting on command line interfaces and their severe restrictions, even after the graphical user interfaces have come, the user still wants to go with what he or she needs. It cannot be in any other manner what he or she needs. Only when there is a felt need, we talk about going and doing it. For the purpose, for the working solution, I am quite contented with looking at the latest PowerPoint presentation facility, latest PowerPoint software, live with around 5 to 7% of its features. Hardly 16 commands on Unix, hardly a few strokes that I can do on Windows, while we know fully well that Unix is a vast operating system, Windows is a vast operating system, PowerPoint has so many facilities which we haven't tried, Word, any package. This remains a major concern, because most of the times we keep telling that the computing facility is here, hardly 7% of the computing time is used for the purpose with which the computer was made, that is the arithmetic, serious calculations. Most of the times we are doing word processing or email or simple communications. Then why is this machine necessary is a big question mark. The CPU and others are geared for fantastic scientific computations, very great analytics. Then why are we limiting ourselves to what is being spoken of as word processing, email technologies and communications? Same is true with software. A truckload of features are supported by every software because that is a generic software. I may use this 7%, other fellow may use another 7%, 1000 users are there, reasonable, 30% of that package is being used. That is how we tell. So, most of the times we are concerned with the unutilized set of features in all these facilities. Towards this extent, we have created the present successful architecture, namely service oriented architectures, which talk about such provisions as a platform, unused things are there, whatever it is, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. You tell what you want to do, we will provide. You do not have to pay for the whole truckload of the exercise. This is a service, you pay service charges exactly for this. Other models are there, web services. As a matter of fact, OOAD cannot be excluded in this, because it was one of the forerunners. We talked about Common Object Request Broker Architecture, CORBA, which is again into the open. You have a request, flood the request, which object can service the request will automatically come back and the service can be established. However, that was quite cumbersome because it comes with this entire exercise of object identification and modeling, OOAD, the total design and development, the 9 diagrams. If you are very clear about what you want to do, like what I want to do with a PowerPoint facility or Word or this machine, then you better talk about defining that service, getting the service done. So many things happen in this block. I am very clear, and my colleagues who are here as a team for this purpose are very clear that only this will happen in this block with me, and this time at this provision. It makes business sense, it is quite commonsensical, because I am very clear that I have to transact this lecture and be done with it. So, that kind of a definition if you have for what exactly do you want to do, you can strike an agreement. 3 o'clock I will come, do this lecture and go, the team is ready, the core team is there, so many people are there in this block, but only 3 or 4 people are at it. Things become very well structured around that service definition, which is so precise. So, service oriented architectures have been very nice. The other alternative has been web services. OOAD is good, but then it did not scale because we need to do a wonderful exercise of flooding lot of objects. It is useful in Internet of Things. That is a thing. The same object request broker, today we are talking about in the context of Internet of Things, very many things can happen. So, what we are talking about again is an idea called usability engineering, which tells that outside of this technical matters like command line interface, cryptic commands, very difficult to remember, cannot recall the commands, then to going to menu based or screen editor based, then windows, icons, menus, all this did happen by 2000, but users remain users. So, there is something about being human, something about that human which tells that whatever be the advances in technology, we are like this, we like to position ourselves vis-a-vis technology in this manner. So, what is that human that makes the entire development process so nice? At the end of the day, we will have a wonderful interaction between all the stakeholders, seemingly different domains, everything is a pleasure. That is what we tried, user centered design, from those perspectives of human factors, from those perspectives of psychology, from those perspectives of ergonomics. So many different topics, symbiotics, so many different topics came. How should the icon be? For some point in time we were talking about this pointers. It's not such an attractive idea. Windows has always created different pointers. I don't see a reason why the pointer should only be like this. Variety is something which we like, users like. It plays on the user's mind that this pointer can be selected. There are about 100 different pointers. Arrow is a default pointer. If you like, you have a flying horse. If you like, you have something else. There is no reason why the pointer cannot be different. So, there are certain nice downloadable pointers. While installing the operating system or when you log in, you can choose one of the pointers and then go ahead. So, we give that much variety, but still the concern is the utilization of the entire piece of software, the entire piece of computing facility. That remains a challenge. So, by far the most practical idea appears to be the service oriented architectures based on cloud computing. We can talk about all these things. Then came the agile. The agile people said that we are very clear minded in a different way, not what we want to do as a service and a service level agreement, saying that if we are agreeing to this, if that is happening, everything is all right. As per the agreement, everything is all right, just go ahead with the agreement. Now, the people in the agile world, they started this nice idea saying that we work exactly from 9 AM to 5 PM. 9 o'clock we have a stand up meeting, very lean team. 5 minutes we will decide what is the user story that we will pick up. The user story may have a description which tells the context. Bringing the context into the development team is very nicely done using the user story. Otherwise, our traditional way of developing software has been to lift the problem outside of the context where it has occurred. Think of a solution in some abstract terms, provide that solution, make it machinizable or computerizable or automatable, and let's give it back. If necessary, they will also purchase the infrastructural support. So, what is it that we are trying to do all along has been take away from the context what we can do as programming, this is our problem, or automation or computerization, push it onto the machine. If we lose the context, we are not able to get back easily from our development platform to the place where the problem has occurred, or we are so happy working at a very high level of abstraction that grounding has become absolutely difficult, or as I kept saying yesterday, the operational excellence becomes a stiffer challenge. If you remain for too long at the level of abstraction and if you are not grounding, or in other words, as the top down progresses, the object oriented analysis and design that teaches us to move concurrently bottom up so that we meet somewhere in the middle is essential to make sure that we take the operations also into the loop at the earliest, into the way in which we work, the businesses, the operations and the development. User stories till today remains the most effective, the simplest way in which that context can be created in the development teams. Otherwise, they are all there in the stakeholders, they are all there in the domain expert. This is a nice way. They keep giving the context, just 5 minutes. The need is obvious, why that need has arisen is also obvious. However, as we progressed, we said that let there be some sprints. Agile has also advanced a lot. They have an agile manifesto, talk about sprints, you talk about epics, which are not necessarily 8-hour working days, but then you can carry forward a bit so that we see some relationship amongst what the users are needing. It appeals to the development mind because it is clearly adhering to something called a motivational theory, if nothing else, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, what we have done is very simple, bring the context first. Can I get the better of all these things, all these ideas that I have been talking about? One promising approach is the use case, very special to UML, very special to OAD, and we thank Ivar Jacobson for giving us that kind of a great start of object oriented software engineering, getting a good start with better requirement management. We start looking at the requirements where all the time in the traditional development methodology we have been telling that nobody is clear about requirements. Not only that, our requirement stability is very low. 30% of the requirements, if you are very clear before going to the next phase, it is heaven. You are divinely blessed. 70% of the requirements do change, and if we cannot accommodate change, we will not be doing software development. That kind of a change request, the rate of change request which we accommodate is not seen in any other engineering discipline. We give maximum scope for change. So, change management, requirement management, in all these cases, use cases have been providing a wonderful way of straddling across all the things that we have been talking about, which enable us at the earliest to understand what exactly is the user wanting to do with what we are developing and build from there. That is a nice way of building a traceability. Best practices for configuring the IBM software development platform tool set. So, why are we so much concerned about it? At the end of the day, who are the people who are using? The people who are hands on. If they find an error, it is 50 times more expensive than what you can find out here. So, use case is economically viable, it improves your return on investment, phenomenal improvements have been seen in several projects. So, use case remains a very good idea with which we can work. So, what is it that we are talking about is essentially trying to see if I can link operations into development and business at the earliest. As we govern, we are talking about many things here. We are talking about priorities and allocation, model business, analysis and design, implement, test, deploy, manage, optimize. The role of a project manager is now becoming very important, and we talked about business, development, operations somehow blending together, rather than telling that from the business we will spend lot more time in development, go back to the business to find out whether what we have developed is exactly what we are thinking or not. From this, when will it trickle to operations? And when we are talking about the business people to come this way to understand operations, they are completely at a loss because they are so much attuned to this, that is, from business they directly go to operations. We are telling that lot of time will be saved here, the business will improve, we will have plenty of return on investment if you go through this exercise of software development, analyst, architect, developer, tester and all that. But then the moment we start taking the business to the operations in this route, completely wishy-washy, because they are not too clear how to take this route, neither are we clear as to what exactly happened in the development. So, there should be a way of making this happen and pool those ways of functioning between business and operations into the development, and that is where the role of project manager has become very essential. We have been talking about different terminology. There is a reason why we tell that we need to go by what is the practice, certain standard terminology. We have been talking about project manager if they are having a certified project management degree or certificate. This PMI, Project Management Institute, has identified a very nice set of topics, a book of knowledge and the body of knowledge, project management. And what we do in that is, if somebody goes through this process, they will be certified as project managers. Initially, most of the things were team leads, project managers and so on and so forth, but then the project manager is expected to have some kind of a formal certification in terms of a project management institute based certification. It has now become a commonplace. Several clients have been insisting that whoever is identified as a project manager must be PMI certified or equivalent. There are a lot of equivalents that we have been talking about. That way we know that the capability level is this, the skill level is this. So, essentially without all that, we talked about something called single point of contact, SPOC, the different terminologies which communicate very quickly, saying that this is where we stand. These are the skills, they are easily communicated. Operations manager, this is more or less being considered as skill sets. Usually this route is replete with skills, this route is replete with lot of formalisms, documentation and everything. We need to blend them, that is essential. That is when we talk about business driven, and that is what we want. It's no more the case of puzzle for challenging oneself. It is no more the case of picking up a nice context, like in typical research, a problem is defined, half solved, talk about a solution, take it to the machine, get some output and analyze. It has got to get back into the place where we started. The entire world of software engineering has generated that much of interest across stakeholders. There is no field that we can think of which is not impacted by software. It has permeated across virtually every discipline today. Today, if we have one common thread across multiple domains, multiple stakeholders, whoever is the stakeholder, it is software. We are seeing it every day now. Suddenly, in last 6 months, we have seen the power of software based tools, the online tools, regardless of what discipline they are, what they want to do, all of them get onto the same page called software. And that's the challenge. That's the future challenge we have. What exactly can be done to push the success rate to more than 36%? We are likely to come back to the traditional ways of building software is what we think, and these paradigms will still be live, and we think that object oriented still holds a lot of promise. The requirements drive development, because business is reflected as requirements. When requirements are driving the development, that was the goal, but then we didn't really manage to freeze the requirements. There is nothing called frozen requirements. So, whenever the requirement is changing, the development process must be driven by that. That rate of change, that grade of complexity, that way of managing large teams, that way of working globally, they remain some of those intellectually stimulating challenges that will keep attracting the best brains in the world. It's still an intellectually stimulating challenge, and we do well. We are now pushing more. We got plenty of tools, case tools, and as I mentioned, if you want to harness the full power of any tool, we need to go through the training. It takes time. The training time may be 5 days, but the learning curve may be 1 year. We have to go by all those ways of working with the tool to understand that. This is true with every exercise, but tool based training tends to be a bit more expensive, and we don't know whether we can keep up pace with the sales of the tool. These are all stimulating challenges. Requirements represent the contract with the customer, users and other stakeholders. Requirements and derived requirements drive all development activities, analysis, design, implementation and testing. Most of the times what we do is, once the requirement phase is done, everything else is being called a change request. Change impact analysis is something that has matured reasonably well to a point where we keep telling that this change will require more time, this change will require more money, this change will require more time and more money, this change is free, we can simply do that change just like that, this change cannot be done. That is how we talk about. We lost the luxury of telling that change cannot be done. Most of the times we accommodate for an uncomfortably long spell of time. All these costs were called hidden costs and they were absorbed. And one of the root causes being mentioned most of the times for the slump in the IT industry is that we have absorbed too much of this. Instead, if we find a way of making the requirements drive the entire exercise, we are not likely to call it change or change request separately and do an analysis. It should seamlessly go ahead. It is an idea. Yes, we know 70% of the requirements change. Let it drive the entire process. Business driven development, requirements driven development, as opposed to test driven, as opposed to component based, user centered. All these we have tried. The one that makes plenty of business sense, if there exists a method of making the requirements drive the development, there is nothing like it. It is not exactly top down analysis, because it is a plus on object oriented analysis and design. It will tell this is how it is happening. There is a bottom up flow that is happening, a linkage to operations, many different types of requirements. FURPS: functionality, usability, reliability, performance and supportability. What is the business looking for? Functionality, usability, reliability, performance, supportability. That is all it looks for. What are the design constraints? Operating systems, environments, compatibility, application standards. What are the business constraints? Legal and regulatory requirements, Federal Communication Commission, Food and Drug Administration, Department of Defense. Let us say these are the constraints. Is there something that allows me to see all these together to facilitate what? Requirements driven development. It is use case. It tells you very quickly what is the functionality, tells you what is the usability, tells you what is reliability. All stakeholders are very clear. This is exactly what is happening. Anytime they want, they see the same page. This is where we are, this is what we are working on. Performance is understandable. Supportability, we need support services. Today no organization can be called a single umbrella kind of an organization. We need to talk about stakeholders, we need to talk about partners, we need to talk about vendors, we need to talk about suppliers. All these support processes need to be factored properly, and while we talk about these as the business drivers, we talk these as the technology or design constraints, operating systems, environments, compatibility, application standards. The third one here is the organizational process that is bound by legal and regulatory requirements, and we want a good use case to be written. Use case till today remains very unique to object oriented software engineering developed by Ivar Jacobson. He had a public method, he had a private method, commercial method. The business was roaring and people were beginning to believe that yes, it works. He is an award winning architect, software architect, and use case was a nice inclusion in the unified modeling language, and it tells you how to put together the FURPS, the design constraints, legal and regulatory requirements. So, please understand that use case driven development in summary simply means that we want everything to be driven by requirements. It is not that we did something about requirements, said enough is enough, we will halt here. There is no end to this. Each time when we look at it afresh, we want to change 20 things and very bulky. So, enough is enough, we will look at 30% and then go ahead. Everything else is a change anywhere. The more we change toward the later part of your life cycle, the more expensive it becomes. Change, errors, defects, everything accumulate, becomes prohibitively expensive. So, we think that the success rate of the projects will improve drastically if we start doing requirements driven. One very good solution is use case driven development. We have seen half a dozen other ways of developing software. This one stands out. Very efficient, very economical and very nice. It gets integrated with the unified modeling language. Again, OAD is now synonymous with UML, and there are tools that help us. In summary, we are looking at requirements driven development through use cases. Thank you. We will meet in the next lecture.